Parce que leur mémoire est courte, les hommes accumulent d'innombrables pense-bêtes.
Because their memory is short-lived, humans accumulate an infinity of memory aids.
Devant ces soutes pleines à craquer, les hommes prennent peur.
Confronted with the teeming warehouses that result, panic sets in. They fear being trampled by books, submerged beneath heaps of words. So to ensure their freedom, they erect formidable fortresses. In the era of Alain René's 1956 documentary, All the World's Memory, the fortress was the National Library of France, a place of on-site storage and retrieval, a temple where the living commune with the dead. In our era, it encompasses faraway stockhouses, off-site extensions of conventional reading rooms, libraries that can only be navigated by machine proxies. One such bastion is a high-density facility known as the Harvard Depository, or HD, wherein reside 9 million books, pamphlets, posters, papers, films, magnetic tapes, photographs, LPs, and microforms. 9 million items and counting. With its 127,000 square feet of storage and 3 million linear feet of shelving, the HD represents the heart of the Harvard University library system.
When I describe the environment that I work in, I usually come up with the end scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark. They load up the Ark into the crate, and they're nailing it shut and wrapping it up, and they start to push it down to the aisle into storage, and as he's going down the aisle, it pans out, and you see how vast it really is.
From the outside, the HD is a faceless emplacement of corrugated concrete, flanked by ramparts of serpentine air ducts. 7 storage modules have been built to date. 8 additional slots remain available to accommodate the continuation of the human record.
Every module displaces a quarter acre, half acre of trees. Fire code keeps them back from the building by a certain distance. It's a much balder hilltop than it used to be.
To avoid bursting at its seams, the HD neither digs deeper into the soil nor reaches higher into the heavens. It sprawls. Invisible to patrons, it is situated 25 miles from campus atop a remote hill, within a guarded compound near Harvard's primate labs. The HD is an analog server farm, comparable to the digital server farms the university maintains in other off-site locations, except for the fact that it mostly delivers physical packets of information via a pipeline of vans that shuttle back and forth to campus 4 times a day at approximately 60 miles per hour, more than 11 million times slower than the speed traveled by digital packets. But long before the advent of digital storage, libraries contended with the challenge of keeping too much information in too little space. Built in 1986, the HD's origins stretch back to the turn of the 20th century, when Harvard's president, Charles William Eliot, first began advocating not for a crematorium for dead books, but only a receiving tomb. Neither am I proposing that the bibliophile or the antiquarian should be deprived of his idols, wrote Eliot, only that his access to them should be made less convenient and attractive.
The building was constructed originally for material that wasn't meant to circulate very frequently. Without even sitting on a shelf in Cambridge, there are things that we purchase that go right to the depository with the expectation that it'll be decades before someone's actually going to look at this. But it's important that we capture it. As it stands, we do circulate about 250,000 items a year. What was needed by the university was a central place for material to be stored that could be quickly distributed to different libraries across the different campuses. Because of the trend towards electronic books and electronic journals, the percentage of the collection that gets used is declining, but the collection continues to grow.
We live in a world of so many publications, but we have scarce time, scarce resources, and we have to be able then to manage our collections in a way that maximizes the value.
The HD is a world designed for the eyes of laser scanners, inventory tracking systems, and computationally and mechanically aided acts of retrieval. Pulls activate the motors that open and shut the access doors to the vault.
We spent considerable time during games out of the booth, and so when you would come back in and fill in the scorecard after grabbing a snack, you would write WW with a slot or a hit or a hit. Wasn't watching you.
Its corridors are narrow and tall, built to accommodate the inhuman girth and reach of electrical lifts, not browsing scholars. The shelves are adjustable, calibrated to the varying dimensions of acid-neutral boxes contained in trays of equal depth.
When I first got there, I would say, hey, let's fix the ripped trays, and within a week, we're $6,000 in the hole, and you haven't even begun to complete the project. I have to think about millions of trays that have to have a handle change.
During the day, the HD has a monastic cast and a nocturnal feel. There's little talk and a great deal of sorting, sifting, stacking, and loading in forward and in reverse. Sources of light flicker on in response to subtle stimuli. Most of the stacks are cloaked in darkness. The few that are not whir to the tune of forklifts performing the day's optimized paths of restitution and retrieval. Directed by database-generated charts, depository staff wield darting laser eyes that scan trays and shelves under the shy stare of ultraviolet-shielded fluorescent fixtures designed to diminish long-term damage to media. Like other time capsules of its kind, the depository sets out to subjugate time as it compresses space. The vault must remain sealed, except when a tug on the pull chain opens up a momentary passage between time and eternity. Decay must be held at bay.
We filter the air for particulate, so we filter the air for gases. The environment we're creating within the building is meant to keep the material for hundreds and hundreds of years, but the envelope, the lifespan of a cement block building is usually about 70 years. You can point and maintain it, and you can keep it about 100, but it's not meant forever.
Even if some works will be consulted only once, they must be preserved. A massive cooling system maintains an average of 50 degrees Fahrenheit with 35% average humidity, a dynamic balance responsive to seasonal change. Paper, leather, and parchment are living materials, aging whether we're reading them or not. In the darkened bay inhabited by film and video collections, the air is even colder. For while we experience these media as unchanging records of moments, their emulsions and magnetized surfaces are continually overwritten by time.
If you think of a library, the first thing that comes to mind for people is book. And so if you're going to extract all those books and move them to a remote site where it isn't possible to enter and browse them, what you need to be able to do is to facilitate that access.
As in patrician libraries of the early modern era, acquisitions that reach the depository are sorted by size once removed from the bins in which they arrive. Each is baptized with a color dot, indicative of its volumetric rank. But here, avoidance of voids and pinpoint placement trump the patrician dream of a chromatically harmonious shelf. Size and shape are king. There's no need to methodically discuss, analyze, classify, and number, as in traditional libraries. There's no margin for error, because a collection with spatial inefficiencies raises costs, and even the slightest act of misplacement could mean permanent loss.
With all our procedures that we have in place now, there's only a few that are missing. We treat the items out here as if we're like the Mounties. If something's missing, we don't give up looking for it until we find it. There's a lot of pride out here.
Here's a book on an ideal path through the HD. Crossing an equator more meaningful than passage through a looking glass. Suddenly, it's no longer the same book, lost in a city of trays. A moment ago, it belonged to an undifferentiated universal memory in which all books are equivalent, looked upon with the same indifferent gaze reserved by God for humanity as a whole. Once it has been ordered, the book or document becomes a chosen one, a favorite, indispensable to its reader. Placed on a computer-generated list, our book is retrieved by a human book picker strapped into a harness atop a mechanical lift.
2203, 146, NIIU. 2215, 06, 561, 03737, 64705, 177, SQ7, 6514, Red 3, 403, SFSP.
It is transferred either to a scanning station for electronic delivery or to a plastic bin, which is then loaded into the waiting van that will eventually deliver our book into the hands of a data-devouring reader who is free to sit down before her slice of universal memory in a reading room as small as a handheld device or as big as the world. The destiny, even of the chosen few, is reabsorption into the memory architecture of the vault.
It's about reading and how we're going to continue to change the way that we process information. And it's answering questions right away and not storing them in your mind. Our scholars aren't reading from beginning to end. Hypertext, moving through documents. The internet has been really big about this. The depository is a real linear, physical collection of material. Some resistance to digitizing content is about the marginalia, writing that's in the side of books or the found objects stuck in pages. Some of that could be recreated digitally, but what I don't think can be is the artifactual value. If we're looking at a piece of vellum, for instance, if someone did a scraping, that's how they erased in the old days. They scraped the ink off the page. You wouldn't be able to see that in a digital or a microform. So you would have to really get super high resolution to see the textures of the parchment. And are we going to do that for everything that's on vellum, really? I mean, maybe centuries from now. Books will still have their place for quite some time. It's storage as a combined physical and digital initiative.
The HD reduces its sparsely distributed human agents to parts in a cybernetic machine that speaks a language not of authors and titles, but of barcode label identifiers and the ID numbers they encode.
There's senior faculty who don't even know that we ever existed. And of course, a lot of younger folks on campus are surprised to know that this goes on. There are times, I think, in any job where you need to be a machine for the sake of getting it done. And that's part of the job, to be transparent. Nobody wants to know why they didn't get their book. I actually came here in '87, 8 months, 9 months after opening day. One storage module was much smaller. The architects in the beginning could only see what they could see, and like every 3 to 5 years we'd be adding a module. So just as we were sweeping up the dust from one, we were starting another. It's like an old house. You keep adding to it. The new architect or the new builder will come and say, who did this and why? And it was a good idea at the time.
We can't maintain and store forever all that we're collecting currently. It's unsustainable.
It's very difficult for us who have grown up with this idea of the library as this kind of shrine to knowledge. Libraries, we're about connections, not collections.
We have to start connecting with our peers. We have to start thinking about what all of the libraries are doing, what they're all storing, what commitment we have to the cultural and scientific heritage of our country.
Whether acting as mausoleum, database, or civic space, libraries of different times and places can be understood as networks compounded of humans, systems, and materials, evolving to preserve and circulate documents and books. Caught between cathedral and storehouse, the HD's differences are of degree: to enshrine the materials as precious relics, to advance the interests of information systems and schema, to make the world's surviving memory available to those who set the HD's cogs in motion, generation upon generation of scholars. At night, the HD is freed from the distractions inflicted by the data devourer's proxies. As soon as they complete their appointed rounds, the decisive light switch is thrown, the last security code entered. The hum of surveillance cameras and cooling fans recedes into the background. There's a ripple through the door as it settles in place. The vault is sealed tight. An epiphany can be delayed no more. Two competing tales are told about the event that is believed to transpire every evening at midnight, even if unheard by mortal ears and unseen by mortal eyes. According to some, a deafening silence reigns in the midst of a sublime spectacle of universal immobility. Books rub up against other books, typefaces touch in secret, imperceptible conversations are carried on across the shelves and across the centuries that deride the petty illusions of the living. Molecular mutations gnaw away at monuments of celluloid and cellulose that have successfully stood every test that time has thrust their way. According to others, music erupts. The celestial song of millions of works, recorded in every medium, in every language, in every country that has ever existed. The chorus of physics, art, anatomy, history, theology, philosophy, poetics, the social sciences, and engineering. An era is prefigured when every enigma will have been solved, when every key to this universe or universes to come will have been handed over. An era sure to be forever postponed. Our collective ark, filled with petabyte upon petabyte of memories, set sail on the sea of time, humankind's noblest endeavor. Oblivion is the destination.